The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace as Catherine adjusted her navy blazer for the 100th time. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked through the corridors she had come to know so well over the past 3 years. Today was different. Today, everything would change. She had been working as a royal correspondent for the BBC, covering various events and ceremonies. What started as a professional assignment had slowly transformed into something much deeper. Prince William had noticed her during a charity gala 2 years ago, not because she was trying to catch his attention, but because she wasn't. While other journalists pushed forward with microphones and cameras, Catherine had been quietly helping an elderly guest who had dropped her purse. Their first real conversation happened during a rainy afternoon at a children's hospital in Manchester. William was there for an official visit, and Catherine was covering the story. When a young patient asked the prince if he ever got scared, William glanced at Catherine before answering. Something in that look told her he was about to be more honest than protocol usually allowed. "Every day," he had said simply, "but being scared doesn't mean you stop trying to help people." After the cameras stopped rolling, William approached her. "You didn't film that last part," he observed. "Some moments are too important for television," Catherine replied, not realizing how those words would echo in William's mind for months to come. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully hidden from the media that Catherine herself was part of. Secret meetings in quiet cafes, long walks through Hyde Park after midnight, and conversations that stretched until dawn. William found in Catherine someone who understood the weight of duty, but also the person behind the title. She never asked for anything, never pushed for exclusive stories or royal access. She simply listened when he talked about the pressure of being second in line to the throne, about missing his mother, about wondering if he would ever find someone who could love both the man and the prince. Catherine, for her part, had never imagined falling in love with royalty. She came from a middle-class family in Reading, where her father worked as an accountant and her mother taught primary school. The world of palaces and protocols was as foreign to her as another planet. But William made her forget about crowns and titles. When they were together, he was just the man who remembered how she liked her tea, who worried about her working late shifts, who made her laugh until her sides hurt. The turning point came during a weekend in Scotland at Balmoral Castle. William had invited her under the pretense of covering a Highland Games event, but really, he wanted her to see the place where he felt most like himself. They walked through the heather-covered hills, and William talked about his childhood memories there with his mother and brother Harry. "Diana would have loved you," he said suddenly, stopping near a small loch where the water reflected the purple sky of sunset. Catherine felt her heart skip. "You think so?" "I know so. She always said the most important thing was kindness. You have that in abundance." William took her hands in his. "Catherine, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about this for months and I can't wait any longer." But before he could continue, they heard the distant sound of helicopters. Paparazzi had somehow discovered their location. The magical moment shattered as royal protection officers appeared, quickly escorting them back to the castle. That night, Catherine lay awake in her guest room wondering what William had been about to say and whether she would ever find out. The pressure intensified over the following months. Photographers followed Catherine to work, to her parents' house, to the grocery store. Tabloids speculated about everything from her background to her university grades to her previous relationships. The constant scrutiny was overwhelming, but William's support never wavered. He arranged for additional security, helped her family deal with the media attention, and repeatedly apologized for the invasion of her privacy. "This isn't your fault," Catherine would tell him during their late-night phone calls. "I chose this when I chose you. Did you, though?" William asked one evening, his voice heavy with guilt. "I sometimes wonder if I'm being selfish, asking you to give up your normal life for this madness." Catherine considered his words carefully. She had indeed given up a lot. Her journalistic career was effectively over, as no one would believe she could remain objective about royal stories. Her friendships had changed, with some people treating her differently because of her connection to William. Simple pleasures like spontaneous shopping trips or quiet dinners out were now complicated by security considerations and the constant threat of photographers. But when she thought about life without William, the world seemed colorless. His dedication to his charitable work inspired her. His genuine concern for others, from world leaders to the palace cleaning staff, showed her a kind of leadership she had never witnessed before. Most importantly, he loved her completely, not in spite of her ordinary background, but because of the authentic person she was. The relationship faced its biggest test when Catherine's past became tabloid fodder. A university boyfriend sold his story to a magazine, sharing intimate details that made Catherine want to disappear forever. Photos from her college years appeared on front pages, accompanied by sneering commentary about her common origins and whether she was suitable for a future king. William was furious, not at Catherine but at the media circus surrounding their relationship. He issued a rare personal statement through the palace, expressing his anger at the harassment of Catherine and her family. Behind closed doors, he held Catherine while she cried, promising her that the storm would pass. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered against his shoulder one particularly difficult evening. "I'm not strong enough for this life." "Yes, you are," William said firmly, pulling back to look into her eyes. "You're the strongest person I know, and whatever happens, wherever this leads us, I will never let you face it alone." Those words would prove prophetic in ways neither of them could imagine. As their third anniversary approached, William knew he had to make a decision. The media speculation was reaching a fever pitch, with daily stories about engagement rumors and royal wedding preparations. But more importantly, he couldn't imagine his future without Catherine by his side. The stage was set for a moment that would change both their lives forever, though neither could predict the emotional intensity of what was about to unfold in the throne room of Buckingham Palace. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Catherine was reviewing notes for a freelance article about community gardens. William's voice sounded strange, formal in a way that immediately put her on edge. "Catherine, could you come to the palace this afternoon? There's something important we need to discuss." "Of course," she replied, though something in his tone made her stomach clench with anxiety. "Is everything all right? We'll talk when you get here." 2:00. After he hung up, Catherine stared at her phone, replaying the conversation. In 3 years, William had never sounded so distant, so carefully controlled. She tried to push away the growing fear that something fundamental was about to change. The palace staff greeted her with their usual warmth, but Catherine noticed subtle differences. The way the footman's eyes lingered on her face with what looked like sympathy. How the private secretary who normally chatted about the weather simply nodded and looked away. Even William's personal protection officer, normally quick with a joke, seemed unusually serious. William was waiting for her in his private study, a room where they had spent countless evenings talking about everything from his charitable work to her dreams of writing a novel someday. Today he stood by the window with his back to her, his posture rigid in a way that reminded her uncomfortably of official photographs. "Thank you for coming," he said without turning around. "William, you're scaring me." "What's wrong?" When he finally faced her, Catherine saw something in his eyes she had never seen before, resignation mixed with profound sadness. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, but remained standing himself, creating a physical distance that felt like a chasm. "I've been having extensive discussions with my father and the palace advisors," he began, his voice carefully modulated. "About us, about our future." Catherine's heart began to race. "What kind of discussions?" William moved to his desk, picking up a thick folder before setting it down again without opening it. "The media attention has become untenable. The constant speculation, the invasion of your privacy, the impact on your family, it's not fair to you." "That's my choice to make," Catherine said quietly. "Is it, though?" William's voice cracked slightly. "When photographers camp outside your parents' house? When your mother can't go to the grocery store without being followed? When tabloids analyze every outfit you wear and every expression on your face?" Catherine stood up, moving closer to him. "Those are obstacles, William. Difficult ones, but not insurmountable. We've handled everything else together." William turned away again, staring out at the palace gardens where they had walked hand in hand so many times. "There's more. The constitutional lawyers have been reviewing precedents, looking at what would be required if we were to marry." The word hung in the air between them. Marriage. They had talked around it, hinted at it, but never discussed it so directly. "The scrutiny would intensify beyond anything you can imagine," William continued. "Every decision you make, every word you speak would be analyzed and criticized. Your entire life would become public property. And if we had children—" He stopped, running his hands through his hair. They would face the same pressures, the same impossible expectations. Catherine felt tears beginning to form. "So what are you saying?" William was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm saying that perhaps the kindest thing I can do is let you go. Let you have the normal life you deserve." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow. She had expected many things from this conversation, but not this. Not William making decisions about her life without including her in them. "Don't you think that's my decision to make?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "How can it be? You can't fully understand what you'd be giving up until it's too late to change your mind." Catherine stared at him, seeing not the man she loved but the prince he was trained to be, making calculated decisions for the greater good, sacrificing personal happiness for duty and protocol. "So that's it?" she asked. 3 years and you're just ending it? Because it might be difficult. It won't just be difficult, Catherine. It will be impossible. The pressure has already changed you. You're more guarded now, more careful about everything you say and do. You've lost that spontaneous joy that first drew me to you." His words stung because there was truth in them. Catherine had become more cautious, more aware of how her actions might be perceived or misinterpreted. The carefree woman who had helped an elderly lady with her purse at a charity gala felt like a different person from a different lifetime. "Maybe I've changed because I'm growing up," she said defensively, "because I understand the responsibilities that come with loving you." "You shouldn't have to change who you are to love me," William replied, finally meeting her eyes. That's exactly the problem. They stood in silence, the weight of 3 years of love and hope and dreams settling between them like dust. Catherine thought about all the moments that had led to this one. Their first dance at a private dinner, the way William had held her during a thunderstorm in Scotland, his nervous excitement when he introduced her to his father, the night he had quietly cried in her arms after a particularly difficult public engagement. "Is this really what you want?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly. William's facade cracked for just a moment, and she saw the pain he was trying so hard to hide. "What I want doesn't matter. This is about protecting you. From what? From a life with you? From a life that would destroy everything beautiful about who you are." Catherine wiped away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts to stay composed. "And what if I'm willing to take that risk? I'm not willing to let you." The finality in his voice told Catherine everything she needed to know. This wasn't a discussion or a conversation where her input mattered. William had made his decision, and he was convinced it was the right one. "I need you to understand," William continued, moving closer but still maintaining that careful distance. "This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. But love sometimes means making impossible choices." Catherine nodded slowly, though everything inside her was screaming in protest. She understood the weight of duty that drove William's decision, even as it broke her heart. She had seen how seriously he took his responsibilities, how he agonized over every decision that might impact others. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you go back to your life. You write that novel you've always talked about. You travel, you find someone who can give you the normal life you deserve. You forget about protocols and public scrutiny and the impossible demands of royal life. And you?" William's smile was heartbreakingly sad. "I continue preparing for the role I was born to fulfill. I focus on my charitable work, my military service, my duties to the crown, alone." As Catherine gathered her things to leave, she noticed William watching her with an intensity that seemed to contradict everything he had just said. But she was too hurt and confused to analyze it further. At the door, she turned back one last time. "For what it's worth," she said, "I would have chosen you. I would have chosen this life, difficulties and all. I would have chosen us." William closed his eyes as if her words caused him physical pain. "I know," he whispered. "That's exactly why I had to choose for both of us." 6 months passed like a blur of gray days and sleepless nights. Catherine threw herself into her writing, finally starting the novel she had talked about for years. The story poured out of her, a tale of 2 people from different worlds who found love but couldn't bridge the gap between their realities. Her editor called it raw and emotionally devastating. Catherine just called it therapeutic. She moved to a small cottage in the Cotswolds, far enough from London to avoid the occasional paparazzi who still sometimes followed her, hoping for a story about the woman who had walked away from a prince. Her parents visited regularly, worried about their daughter's quiet sadness but respecting her need for space to heal. The media had a field day with the breakup, though the palace released only a brief statement about mutual decision and remaining friends. Tabloids speculated endlessly about the reasons, creating elaborate theories involving secret affairs, family disapproval, and impossible demands. None of them came close to the simple, devastating truth that William had loved her enough to let her go. Catherine avoided royal news as much as possible, but it was impossible to completely escape. She learned through newspaper headlines that William had thrown himself into his military training with renewed intensity. Photos showed him looking serious and focused at various public engagements, every inch the dutiful prince. If he was struggling with their separation, he hid it well behind his royal mask. Her life began to find a new rhythm. She wrote in the mornings, tended to a small garden in the afternoons, and read by the fireplace in the evenings. It was peaceful, quiet, and exactly the kind of normal life William had wanted for her. It was also crushingly lonely. Friends tried to introduce her to other men, a professor from Oxford, a successful businessman, a charming doctor who volunteered at the local hospital. They were all perfectly nice, accomplished, and interested in her. Catherine went through the motions of dating, even managing to enjoy herself occasionally. But every laugh felt forced, every conversation seemed to lack depth, and every goodnight kiss reminded her of what was missing. The hardest part was the dreams. Almost every night she found herself back in William's arms, reliving moments from their relationship or imagining conversations they would never have. She would wake with tears on her cheeks, the phantom sensation of his touch lingering on her skin. One morning in late autumn, while working on a particularly difficult chapter of her novel, Catherine's phone rang with an unknown London number. "Catherine, it's Harry." Prince Harry's voice was unmistakable, though they had only met a handful of times during her relationship with William. Her heart began to race. "Harry, hello? How did you get my number?" "I have my ways," he said with the characteristic humor that had always made him the more approachable of the two brothers. "Listen, I'm calling because I'm worried about my brother." Catherine's grip tightened on the phone. "Is he all right?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally." Harry paused. "He's miserable, Catherine. Absolutely miserable. He's going through the motions of his duties, but anyone who knows him can see he's just existing, not living." Catherine closed her eyes, trying to push away the surge of hope and pain Harry's words brought. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't know what you want me to do about it. I want you to come back to London. There's something you need to see." "Harry," William made his position very clear. "He doesn't want me in his life." "That's where you're wrong." Harry's voice became more serious. "What he wants and what he thinks he should do are two completely different things. He's convinced himself that he did the noble thing by letting you go, but he's destroying himself in the process." Catherine walked to her window, looking out at the autumn leaves falling from the old oak tree in her garden. Even if that were true, nothing has changed. All the reasons he ended things are still valid. Are they, though? Since when do we let fear make our most important decisions? It's not about fear, Harry, it's about reality. The pressures, the scrutiny, the impossible expectations, they're all still there. Yes, they are. But you know what else is still there? The love between you and my brother. And that's worth fighting for. Catherine felt tears welling up. He asked me to move on, to find someone who could give me a normal life. And have you? Found someone else? The question hung in the air. Catherine thought about the nice men she had dated, the pleasant conversations and careful goodnight kisses that felt like pale imitations of real connection. "No," she admitted quietly. "Neither has he. And he won't, Catherine, because you're it for him. You're his person, his anchor, his chance at real happiness. And he's too bloody noble for his own good to fight for what he wants. So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you come to London next week. There's a private ceremony at St. James's Palace. Nothing official, just a small gathering to honor some of the charities William works with. He doesn't know I'm calling you, and he'd probably be furious if he found out." Catherine's heart pounded. The thought of seeing William again both thrilled and terrified her. "I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe not. But sometimes the best ideas are the scariest ones." Harry's voice softened. "Catherine, I've watched my brother navigate duty and responsibility his entire life. He's always done what was expected of him, what was proper, what served the greater good. But for once, just once, I'd like to see him fight for something he wants just because he wants it." And you think seeing me will make him do that? I think seeing you will remind him that some things are worth taking risks for. That love, real, honest, deep love, is rare enough that when you find it, you don't let protocol and fear drive it away. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the months of trying to convince herself that William had made the right choice. Thinking about the empty feeling that had settled in her chest and refused to leave. Thinking about the way William's eyes had looked the last time she saw him, like a man who was drowning but trying to appear calm on the surface. What if he doesn't want to see me? She asked. Then you'll know for certain and you can both truly move on. But what if he does? What if he's been hoping you'll come back but is too proud or too scared to ask? Catherine thought about her quiet life in the cottage, her half-finished novel, her careful attempts to build a future without William in it. It was safe, predictable, and utterly colorless. If I come, she said slowly, I'm not making any promises. I'm not going to throw myself at him or beg him to take me back. I wouldn't expect you to, just be there, be yourself. Let him see what he gave up and decide if it was worth it. After they hung up, Catherine sat in her small sitting room for hours, staring at the fire and thinking about choices and chances and the difference between love and wisdom. By the time the sun set, she had made her decision. She would go to London, not to win William back, but to finally get the closure they had never properly had. She would see him one more time, confirm that their separation had been the right choice, and then she could truly move forward with her life. At least, that's what she told herself as she booked a train ticket to London and tried to ignore the way her hands shook with anticipation and fear. The ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday evening, just 5 days away. 5 days to prepare herself for seeing the man she still loved, still dreamed about, still missed with an ache that hadn't diminished despite the months apart. 5 days to build up enough courage to face whatever emotions would surface when she looked into his eyes again. Catherine spent those days in a strange state of suspended animation, going through the motions of her daily routine, while her mind raced with possibilities and fears. What would she say to him? How would he react to seeing her? Had he changed, had she? The night before her trip to London, she stood before her bedroom mirror trying to recognize the woman looking back at her. She was thinner than she had been 6 months ago, her face more angular, her eyes holding a sadness that no amount of concealer could hide. But there was something else there too. A strength that hadn't existed before, forged in the fire of heartbreak and solitude. Whatever happened in London, she would survive it. She had survived losing William once. She could survive seeing him again. The question was whether either of them could survive what might happen when they were in the same room again, breathing the same air, remembering everything they had once meant to each other. The train journey to London felt endless and too short at the same time. Catherine stared out the window at the countryside rushing past, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a simple black dress that was elegant but not attention-seeking, her grandmother's pearl earrings for courage, and a coat that could hide her if she needed to make a quick escape. St. James's Palace looked exactly as she remembered, its red brick walls and ancient windows holding centuries of secrets. Catherine arrived early, hoping to slip in quietly and find a position where she could observe without being conspicuous. Harry had arranged for her name to be on the guest list, though he warned her that discretion was essential. The ceremony was being held in the throne room, a space Catherine had never entered during her time with William. As she walked through the corridors, guided by a palace aide who seemed unaware of her significance, memories flooded back. The scent of old wood and fresh flowers, the sound of footsteps echoing on ancient floors, the particular quality of light that seemed unique to royal residences. The throne room took her breath away. The ornate ceiling stretched high above, decorated with intricate plasterwork and gilt details. Rich red carpet covered the floor, and chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing a small stage where William would speak. The room was already half full with charity representatives, palace staff, and other dignities. Catherine chose a seat toward the back, partially hidden behind a pillar. From here, she could see the throne itself, an imposing chair that had witnessed countless moments of British history. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was about to see William in this most symbolic of settings, surrounded by all the weight and ceremony of his royal role. People continued to file in, their conversations creating a low murmur that filled the grand space. Catherine recognized some faces from her time with William. charity workers he had particularly respected, palace staff who had always been kind to her, even a few journalists she had worked alongside in what felt like another lifetime. Then Harry appeared at the front of the room, scanning the crowd. His eyes found hers and he gave an almost imperceptible nod. A few moments later he was at her side. "You came," he said quietly, settling into the seat beside her. "I said I would. How are you feeling?" Catherine considered the question. Her heart was racing, her palms were sweaty, and she felt simultaneously terrified and more alive than she had in months. "Like I might be making a terrible mistake. Or the best decision of your life," Harry replied with a slight smile. Before Catherine could respond, a hush fell over the room. William had entered, and even after 6 months apart, the sight of him made Catherine's breath catch. He looked older, more serious, carrying himself with the bearing of a man who had accepted the full weight of his responsibilities. He wore a dark suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, and his face had the composed, pleasant expression he wore for official functions. But Catherine knew him well enough to see what others might miss. The tightness around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. The careful way he held himself as if one wrong move might cause him to shatter. The absence of the genuine warmth that had once made his smile transform his entire face. William took his place at the podium, his eyes scanning the crowd as he had been trained to do, acknowledging various dignitaries with subtle nods. Catherine held her breath as his gaze moved toward her section. But he didn't see her, hidden as she was behind the pillar. "Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished guests," William began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "Thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate the incredible work being done by the charities represented here." As William spoke about dedication and service, about the importance of supporting vulnerable communities, Catherine found herself transported back to the man she had fallen in love with. This was the William who had inspired her, passionate about causes greater than himself, articulate about the responsibilities of privilege, genuine in his desire to make a difference. But there was something missing from his presentation, a spark that had been there when he spoke about these same issues during their private conversations. He was saying all the right words, hitting all the proper notes, but it felt scripted, careful, safe. The work these organizations do reminds us that true nobility comes not from titles or tradition, but from our willingness to serve others, William continued. It comes from putting the needs of others before our own comfort, from making difficult choices in service of the greater good. Catherine wondered if those last words were meant for someone specific, perhaps himself. She thought about the choice he had made 6 months ago, convinced it was for her own good, despite the pain it had caused them both. The speech continued for another 10 minutes, covering the specific achievements of various charities and announcing new royal patronages. William was professional, informative, and completely in control. To most of the audience, he probably appeared to be the perfect prince, dutiful, committed, and admirably focused on his responsibilities. But Catherine could see the cracks in his armor. The moment when his voice faltered almost imperceptibly while talking about supporting families through difficult transitions, the way his hands gripped the podium just a little too tightly when he spoke, about the importance of not giving up hope even when circumstances seem impossible. As the formal presentation concluded and guests began to move toward the reception area, Catherine remained seated, unsure of her next move. She had accomplished what she came for. She had seen William, confirmed that he was surviving their separation, and reminded herself of all the reasons their relationship had been impossible. So why did every instinct in her body scream at her to go to him? "Still think coming here was a mistake?" Harry asked, appearing beside her again. "I don't know what I think," Catherine admitted. "He seemed different. He is different. He's convinced himself that duty requires sacrificing personal happiness. He's thrown himself so completely into his royal role that he's forgotten there's supposed to be a person underneath the prince." Catherine watched as William moved through the crowd in the reception area, shaking hands and making polite conversation with practiced ease. He was every inch the royal he had been trained to be, but the man she had loved seemed buried beneath layers of protocol and propriety. "Maybe that's who he really is," she said quietly. "Maybe the man I fell in love with was just who he was when he was trying to escape his real life. Or maybe," Harry suggested, "the man you fell in love with was who he really is when he's with someone who sees him as a person first and a prince second." Their conversation was interrupted as more guests moved past them toward the reception. Catherine realized she would need to make a decision soon: slip away quietly or join the reception and risk a face-to-face encounter with William. "He doesn't know I'm here, does he?" she asked Harry. "Not unless he spotted you, which I doubt from where you've been sitting." Catherine took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "What do you think would happen if he saw me?" Harry was quiet for a moment, watching his brother navigate the reception with mechanical precision. "I think," he said finally, "it would remind him of everything he's been trying to forget. Whether that's a good thing or a catastrophe probably depends on how brave you both are." Catherine stood up slowly, smoothing her dress and checking her reflection in the ornate mirror mounted on the nearby wall. She looked nervous but composed, sad but determined. It was, she realized, an accurate representation of exactly how she felt. "I'm going to the reception," she said, surprising herself with the decision. Harry smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. I'm not making any promises about what I'll do when I get there. I'm not asking you to, just be yourself. That's all you've ever needed to be." As Catherine walked toward the reception area, her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She had no plan, no script for what she would say if William saw her. All she knew was that she couldn't leave without finding out if the man she had loved was still somewhere beneath the princely facade. The reception room was crowded and elegant, filled with the gentle buzz of polite conversation and the soft clink of champagne glasses. Catherine accepted a glass of wine from a passing server and found a position near the wall where she could observe without being too conspicuous. William was across the room, deep in conversation with an elderly woman who Catherine recognized as the head of a children's literacy charity. He was listening intently, asking thoughtful questions, but even from a distance, Catherine could see the careful control in his posture. As if sensing her presence, William suddenly looked up, his eyes scanning the room. For a moment, their gazes met across the crowded space, and Catherine saw his face go completely still. Recognition, shock, and something that might have been longing flickered across his features before his royal training kicked in, and his expression became carefully neutral. But in that instant of unguarded reaction, Catherine saw the answer to the question that had brought her to London. The man she had loved was still there, buried beneath duty and protocol but unmistakably present. The question now was whether either of them was brave enough to fight for what they both clearly still felt. The moment stretched between them like a taut wire. William's conversation with the charity director continued, but Catherine could see his attention was completely fractured. His responses became shorter, more automatic, and twice she watched him lose track of what the woman was saying. Catherine remained frozen by the wall, her wine glass untouched in her hand. She had imagined this moment dozens of times during the train journey to London, but none of her mental rehearsals had prepared her for the actual impact of seeing William's face when he spotted her. The flash of raw emotion before he collected himself had told her everything she needed to know about his true feelings. Harry materialized beside her, following her gaze across the room to where William was now clearly struggling to maintain his composure. "Well," Harry said quietly, "that answered that question." "What question?" "Whether he's gotten over you." Catherine watched as William excused himself from his conversation and moved toward the edge of the room, clearly needing a moment to regroup. His path would take him directly past her position. Her heart hammered as she realized they would come face to face within moments. "I can't do this," she whispered to Harry. "I should leave." "You could," Harry agreed, "or you could stay and find out what happens when two people stop letting fear make their decisions for them." Before Catherine could respond, William was there, standing just a few feet away with his back to the wall in a mirror of her own position. Up close, she could see the changes 6 months had wrought. New lines around his eyes, a tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before, and a careful guardedness that broke her heart. Catherine. Her name on his lips was barely a whisper. "Hello? William." They stood in awkward silence, the noise of the reception fading into background static. Catherine was acutely aware of everything about him, the familiar scent of his cologne, the way he unconsciously straightened his tie when nervous, the slight tremor in his hands that only she would notice. "You look well," William said finally, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes drinking in every detail of her appearance. "Thank you. So do you. It was a polite lie. He looked tired, strained, like a man carrying a weight that was slowly crushing him. I didn't expect to see you here. Catherine glanced toward Harry, who had discreetly moved away but was still within earshot. Harry thought I should come. He was concerned about you. Something flickered across William's face. Surprise, perhaps even gratitude, before the mask slipped back into place. Harry worries too much. I'm fine. Are you? The simple question hung between them, loaded with 6 months of unspoken pain and regret. William's careful composure wavered for just a moment, and Catherine saw the truth he was trying so hard to hide. I'm managing, he said finally. That's not the same thing. William turned to face her fully for the first time, and Catherine had to fight not to step closer to him. The pull between them was as strong as ever, perhaps stronger for having been denied. Catherine, what are you doing here? Really? She took a sip of wine, buying herself time to think. The honest answer was that she didn't know anymore. She had come for closure, to prove to herself that their relationship was truly over. Instead, seeing him again had only confirmed what she had been trying to deny for 6 months, that she was still completely, hopelessly in love with him. I wanted to see how you were, she said. To make sure you were happy with your decision. My decision, William repeated, a bitter edge creeping into his voice. You make it sound like it was easy, wasn't it? You seemed very certain that ending things was the right choice. William was quiet for a long moment, watching the other guests mingle and laugh as if they existed in a different world. It was the logical choice, he said finally. That doesn't make it easy. And logic is more important than love? The question slipped out before Catherine could stop it, more accusatory than she had intended. William's jaw tightened and she saw the flash of pain in his eyes before he looked away. Sometimes, yes, when love leads to nothing but pain in impossible situations. So you're happy, living the logical life you chose? William turned back to her, and for a moment, his carefully constructed walls crumbled completely. The anguish in his expression was so raw that Catherine instinctively reached toward him before catching herself. Happy? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I haven't been happy since the day I walked away from you. But happiness isn't the point, is it? Duty is. Responsibility. Protecting the people we care about from the consequences of our choices. Even when those people are adults capable of making their own choices. Especially then. William's voice dropped so low that Catherine had to lean closer to hear him. Do you know what the headlines would be like if we got back together? Do you know what your life would become if we married? You'd never have another private moment, another spontaneous decision, another day when you could just be yourself without considering how it might affect the monarchy. Catherine felt tears threatening but forced them back. You're talking about hypothetical futures, William. What about right now? What about this moment, standing here together, both of us clearly miserable apart? This moment doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. This moment is all we have. The grand scheme is just an excuse to avoid taking risks. Their voices had risen slightly, and Catherine noticed a few nearby guests glancing in their direction. William noticed too and immediately stepped back, his royal training reasserting itself. We can't do this here, he said, scanning the room to see if anyone was paying too much attention to their conversation. Then where? Your study again, where you can deliver another carefully rehearsed speech about why we can't be together. Catherine, please. No, William. You asked me what I'm doing here, and I'm going to tell you. I'm here because 6 months ago, you made a unilateral decision about both our lives without giving me any real say in the matter. You decided what was best for me, what I could and couldn't handle, what I did and didn't deserve. William's face went pale. I was trying to protect you. From what? From loving you? From being loved by you? From having a voice in my own future? From becoming a prisoner of protocol and public scrutiny? From losing yourself completely in the demands of royal life? Catherine set down her wine glass with more force than necessary. Don't you think that was my choice to make? My risk to take? How could I ask you to make that sacrifice? The same way I might have asked you to make sacrifices for us. That's what people do when they love each other. They figure it out together. They don't make executive decisions and then hide behind duty and nobility. William ran his hands through his hair, destroying his perfectly styled appearance. Several guests were now openly staring, and Catherine could see palace staff beginning to move in their direction. We need to continue this conversation somewhere else, William said urgently. Do we? Or are you going to find another reason to walk away? Before William could answer, Harry appeared at their side, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. The throne room is empty, he said quietly. Private entrance through the back corridor. William looked torn between his training to handle this situation diplomatically and his obvious desire to continue their conversation away from prying eyes. Go, Catherine said, making the decision for him. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. William nodded curtly and began moving toward the exit Harry had indicated. Catherine followed, her heart pounding with the knowledge that the next few minutes would determine the rest of both their lives. The throne room was indeed empty, lit only by the soft glow of evening light filtering through the tall windows. The chairs from the ceremony had been cleared away, leaving just the ornate space and the imposing throne itself. William stopped in the center of the room, his back to Catherine. When he spoke, his voice echoed slightly in the vast space. 6 months ago, I thought I was being noble, selfless, protecting you from a life that would have demanded everything from you and given very little in return. Catherine moved closer but maintained some distance between them. And now? Now I realize I was being a coward. I was so afraid of watching you suffer because of me, of seeing you lose yourself in the demands of royal life, that I chose to suffer the loss of you instead. So what changed? Why are you admitting this now? William finally turned to face her, and Catherine saw that his composure was hanging by a thread. Because seeing you again, even for these few minutes, has reminded me of what happiness feels like. And I've realized that losing you hasn't protected either of us from pain. It's just guaranteed that we'd both be miserable. Catherine felt her heart racing as she processed his words. Are you saying you regret your decision? I'm saying I made the wrong choice for the right reasons. I'm saying that I've spent 6 months trying to convince myself that duty and logic matter more than love, and failing miserably. And what are you going to do about it? William looked at the throne behind him, then back at Catherine. I don't know. The practical problems haven't gone away. The media attention, the protocol, the impossible demands, they're all still there. But so are we, Catherine said softly. Still here, still in love, still capable of figuring it out together if we're brave enough to try. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Catherine could see William warring with himself, torn between the training of a lifetime and the pull of his heart. Catherine, he said finally, his voice breaking slightly, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to choose love over duty when I've been taught that duty is everything. Then don't choose, Catherine said, stepping closer. Find a way to have both. Be the prince who serves his people and the man who fights for love. Show them that the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. William stared at her, and Catherine could see the exact moment when something fundamental shifted in his expression. The careful prince's mask finally cracked completely, revealing the man she had fallen in love with. Vulnerable, torn, but ultimately willing to take the greatest risk of his life. William took a step toward her, then another, until they were standing close enough that Catherine could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he reached up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I've missed you, he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. Every single day, every single moment. I've missed your laugh, your terrible cooking, the way you steal the covers in your sleep. I've missed talking to you about everything and nothing. I've missed feeling like myself instead of just playing a role. Catherine leaned into his touch, her eyes closing as 6 months of carefully controlled pain finally found release. I've missed you too. More than I thought it was possible to miss another person. Can you forgive me for making that decision without you? For walking away when I should have fought for us? Catherine opened her eyes, looking directly into his. There's nothing to forgive, William. You did what you thought was right. But now we have to decide what we do next. William's hand slid down to her shoulders, his grip gentle but desperate, as if he was afraid she might disappear again. I want to try. I want to find a way to make this work. But I need you to understand what you'd be taking on. The scrutiny will be intense, the demands endless. There will be protocols for everything. Expectations you can't imagine. Your every word, every outfit, every expression will be analyzed by the media and the public. I know, Catherine said simply. I've had 6 months to think about it, to really understand what royal life would mean. And yes, it's intimidating. Yes, it would change everything about my life. But the alternative, living without you, has been so much worse than any protocol or public scrutiny could ever be. William searched her face, looking for any sign of doubt or uncertainty. The constitutional lawyers have been very clear about what would be required. Extensive preparation, media training, gradual integration into royal duties. It wouldn't be easy or quick. Nothing worthwhile ever is. And if we have children, they would face the same pressures, the same impossible expectations. Catherine silenced him by placing her finger gently against his lips. William, we can spend the rest of our lives cataloging all the reasons this is difficult, or we can focus on the one reason it's worth doing. We love each other. Everything else is just logistics. William caught her hand and pressed it against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. When did you become so wise? When I spent 6 months learning the difference between existing and living. Catherine smiled softly. I was existing without you, William, just going through the motions. But this right now, standing here with you, this is living. They stood in silence for a moment, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were contemplating. The throne loomed behind them, a constant reminder of the weight of William's responsibilities and the complexity of the life they would be choosing together. There's something else, William said eventually, his voice hesitant. Something I've been thinking about for months but didn't have the courage to say before. Catherine waited, giving him the space to find his words. I want to propose to you, not because it's expected or because it's the next logical step, but because I can't imagine spending the rest of my life with anyone else. Because you make me a better man and a better prince. Because when I think about the future, you're in every single vision that matters. Catherine's breath caught. William? I don't have a ring with me, he continued, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. And this isn't exactly the romantic proposal I had planned before everything fell apart. But I needed you to know that if we do this, if we find a way to make this work, I want it to be forever. I want you to be my wife, my partner, my anchor in all the chaos that comes with this life. Catherine felt tears streaming down her face again. But these were different tears, tears of joy and relief and overwhelming love. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking if you would consider it when the time is right, when we figured out how to navigate everything that comes with it. Catherine laughed through her tears, the sound echoing in the vast throne room. William, I fell in love with you 3 years ago in a hospital in Manchester. I stayed in love with you through media scrutiny and protocol training and impossible expectations. I've been in love with you through 6 months of separation and heartbreak. Do you really think I need more time to consider whether I want to spend my life with you? William's face lit up with the first genuine smile Catherine had seen from him all evening. Is that a yes? That's a yes to all of it. Yes to finding a way to make this work. Yes to facing the challenges together. Yes to building a life that honors both your duties and our love. And yes, when the time comes to marrying you. William pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly that Catherine could barely breathe. She didn't care. After 6 months of feeling like she was drowning, being in his arms again felt like finally reaching shore. I love you, William whispered against her hair. I love you so much it scared me into making the biggest mistake of my life. And I love you enough to fight for this, for us, no matter how complicated it gets. They held each other in the throne room as the last light of evening faded from the windows. Two people who had finally chosen courage over fear, love over logic, hope over resignation. The throne sat nearby, a silent witness to their reunion and a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. But for this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that they were together again, that they had found their way back to each other, despite everything that had tried to keep them apart. Eventually, they heard voices in the corridor outside. The reception was clearly winding down, and palace staff would soon be checking the various rooms. William reluctantly loosened his hold on Catherine, though he kept her hands clasped in his. We should go, he said regretfully. Harry is probably wondering what happened to us. And there will be questions if we're missing much longer. Catherine nodded, though she was reluctant to leave the privacy of the throne room and return to the world where their relationship would once again be subject to scrutiny and speculation. What happens now? She asked. Do we announce something? Start making plans? William considered the question carefully. Now we take it slowly. We reintroduce the idea of us being together, carefully and deliberately. We work with the palace communications team to manage the media response. We get you the support and preparation you'll need for royal life. And in the meantime, William brought her hands to his lips, pressing gentle kisses to her knuckles. In the meantime, we remember that love is worth fighting for. We remember that we're stronger together than apart. And we prove to everyone, including ourselves, that duty and happiness don't have to be mutually exclusive. As they prepared to leave the throne room and face whatever came next, Catherine felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. The challenges ahead were real and daunting, but they would face them together. The woman who had once knelt in defeat at the thought of losing William was gone, replaced by someone who was ready to stand tall beside him, whatever the cost. The throne room had witnessed many moments of British history, but few as quietly revolutionary as this one, a prince choosing love over protocol, a commoner choosing courage over comfort, and two people deciding that some things were worth any sacrifice. Hand in hand, they walked toward the door in whatever future they would build together, no longer afraid of falling because they had learned the most important lesson of all, that when you have someone who truly loves you, you never fall alone. 3 months later, Catherine stood in front of the mirror in her new London apartment, adjusting the navy blue dress she had chosen for today's official announcement. The palace communications team had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment, the formal confirmation of her relationship with Prince William and their intention to marry. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of preparation unlike anything she could have imagined. Media training sessions where she learned to navigate hostile questions with grace, protocol lessons covering everything from the proper way to curtsy, to foreign dignitaries to the complex hierarchy of royal precedents, security briefings about the new realities of her life, constitutional lawyers explaining the legal implications of her future role. But through it all, William had been her constant anchor. He attended every meeting he could, held her hand through the overwhelming moments, and reminded her daily that they were in this together. Their relationship had deepened during these months of preparation, tested by stress but strengthened by their shared commitment to making it work. The media speculation had been intense once rumors of their reconciliation began circulating. Photographers camped outside her apartment building. Tabloids analyzed every public appearance for clues about their relationship status, and social media buzzed with theories about a potential royal engagement. Through it all, Catherine had followed the palace's guidance, maintaining her privacy while gradually becoming more visible at William's side. Today's announcement would put an end to the speculation and officially begin the next chapter of their lives together. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. William stood in the hallway, looking impeccable in his navy suit, but she could see the nervous energy beneath his composed exterior. "Ready?" he asked, though his eyes held the same question she was asking herself. "As ready as anyone can be for something like this," Catherine replied, accepting the kiss he pressed to her forehead. "The photographers will be positioned outside the palace gates. We'll walk out together, make a brief statement, and answer a few pre-approved questions. Then we'll go inside for the formal reception with the press corps." Catherine nodded, having rehearsed this schedule dozens of times with the communications team. "And after that? After that, we officially begin our life together in the public eye." William took her hands in his, studying her face carefully. "Last chance to change your mind. Once we walk out those doors and make this announcement, everything changes forever." Catherine thought about the woman she had been 3 months ago, sitting alone in her cottage in the Cotswolds, convinced that her chance at happiness with William was over. Then she thought about the woman she was becoming, someone strong enough to handle public scrutiny, brave enough to take on royal responsibilities, confident enough to stand beside a future king as his equal partner. "I'm not changing my mind," she said firmly. "Are you?" William's smile was radiant. "Never." The car ride to Buckingham Palace was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts about the magnitude of what they were about to do. Catherine watched London pass by the windows, knowing that this might be one of the last times she could move through the city without causing a major security and media event. At the palace, they were met by the communications team for a final briefing. The statement had been carefully crafted to acknowledge their relationship, announce their engagement, and provide just enough personal detail to satisfy public curiosity without revealing too much private information. Remember, the press secretary advised, keep your answers concise and warm. If you're asked about anything we haven't prepared for, it's perfectly acceptable to say you'll address that in future interviews. Catherine nodded, feeling surprisingly calm now that the moment had finally arrived. All the preparation, all the worry, all the what-ifs had led to this point. Now all that was left was to step forward into their new life together. Harry appeared in the preparation room, grinning broadly. Ready to make some history? Is it really history? Catherine asked, genuinely curious. A commoner marrying into the direct line of succession? Harry laughed. It's definitely history. And it's about time. William squeezed Catherine's hand. It's time. They walked through the palace corridors toward the main entrance, where they could already hear the noise of the assembled media. Camera crews from around the world had gathered for this announcement, and the sound of their equipment and conversations created a constant buzz of anticipation. At the entrance, William paused and turned to Catherine one final time. I love you, he said simply. Whatever happens out there, whatever questions they ask, whatever challenges we face, I love you and I'm proud to be doing this with you. I love you too, Catherine replied, feeling a surge of confidence flow through her. Let's go show the world what we're made of. The doors opened and they stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight. The sound hit them immediately. Camera shutters clicking rapidly, reporters calling out questions, the general excitement of a major royal announcement. But Catherine felt remarkably steady as they walked to the podium that had been set up on the palace steps. William approached the microphone with the confidence of someone who had been giving public statements his entire life. Catherine stood slightly behind him and to his left, following the positioning they had rehearsed. Good afternoon, William began, his voice carrying clearly across the crowd. Thank you all for being here today. I have the tremendous pleasure of announcing my engagement to Miss Catherine Middleton. A roar of excitement went up from the crowd of reporters and photographers. William waited for it to subside before continuing. Catherine and I have known each other for several years, and our relationship has deepened into something I treasure above all else. She has shown remarkable grace, intelligence, and strength in preparing for the responsibilities that come with this role, and I am honored that she has agreed to become my wife. William stepped aside slightly, indicating that Catherine should join him at the microphone. This was the moment she had been most nervous about, her first official public statement as a future member of the royal family. Thank you, Catherine said, her voice steady and warm. I'm deeply honored by Prince William's proposal and excited about the future we're building together. While I understand that this role comes with significant responsibilities and challenges, I'm committed to serving the British people and supporting the charitable causes that are so important to us both. The questions came quickly after that. About wedding plans still being finalized, about Catherine's background, she spoke proudly of her family and education, about how they would balance royal duties with personal happiness, together, with patience and commitment. Catherine found herself relaxing as the interview progressed. The questions were fair, the atmosphere was positive, and she could feel William's steady presence beside her, ready to support her if needed but allowing her to speak for herself. Miss Middleton, one reporter called out, what would you say to people who might question whether someone from outside the aristocracy is prepared for royal life? Catherine had anticipated this question and had her answer ready. I would say that I bring a different perspective to this role, and I hope that will be valuable. I've had the privilege of seeing how hard Prince William works to serve others, and I want to contribute to that work in my own way. I may not have been born into this life, but I've chosen it with full understanding of what it requires. After 20 minutes of questions, William wrapped up the session. Thank you all very much. We look forward to sharing more details about our wedding plans in the coming weeks. As they walked back into the palace, Catherine felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had done it, faced the international media, answered their questions with honesty and grace, and officially stepped into her new role as William's fiancée and future princess. How do you feel? William asked as soon as they were inside. Surprisingly good, Catherine replied, realizing it was true. Nervous, excited, overwhelmed, but good. You were perfect out there. Absolutely perfect. That evening, as they sat together in William's private sitting room, Watching news coverage of their announcement, Catherine reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From their first meeting 3 years ago to their painful separation to their reunion in the throne room, every step had led to this moment. The coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Commentators praised Catherine's poise and intelligence. Royal experts discussed the significance of the engagement, and the public seemed genuinely excited about the upcoming wedding. No regrets? William asked, noticing her contemplative mood. Catherine curled up closer to him on the sofa, resting her head on his shoulder. None. This is exactly where I want to be. Outside, London continued its daily rhythm, largely unaware that a new chapter in royal history was beginning. But inside the palace, two people who had fought for their love against seemingly impossible odds sat together, planning a future that would honor both duty and happiness, tradition and change. The throne room where they had reconciled was just down the hall, but Catherine no longer thought of it as a symbol of intimidating responsibility. Instead, it represented the moment when they had chosen courage over fear, when they had decided that love was worth any sacrifice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: wedding planning, continued media attention, the ongoing process of preparing Catherine for her royal role. But tonight, they were simply two people in love, grateful for second chances and ready to face whatever came next together. Catherine had once dropped to her knees in that throne room, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what loving William would require. But she would never fall alone again, because she had learned the most important lesson of all: that when love is real and commitment is absolute, you can weather any storm and overcome any obstacle. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and promise, and they would meet it hand in hand, hearts united, ready to prove that sometimes the greatest fairy tales are the ones where love conquers all.